Escape from Tarkov PVE is about to see some big changes with the new patch that is launching today, which is patch 0.16.2. And so with this patch, we are going to see a ton of changes to some of the AI alongside some of the positive changes that have been mentioned on the Tarkov community that players wanted. So you, me, and anyone else that plays the game can, of course, use Tarkov community. So it's tarkov.community, which we did a video on yesterday talking about some of the changes, the state of PvE and that sort of thing at this moment in time. And of course you can put in your own suggestions to the devs, and a lot of them actually get changed. And so with this kind of patch, what's actually happening with PvE? Well, the first thing is that we've got some performance changes to help improve the performance of game, and of course basically some trying to optimize how good the game is running. So there's some performance on customs, the in-raid memory consumption on all locations, so this should help out people with, of course, not £3,000 computers or $5,000 or $4,000 computers. So people who are running, with standard people's computers, which is amazing as most people don't spend that much on their computer. Anyway, optimize the shadow quality for better performance on low NPCs. So once again, helping out the general audience of Tarkov, I believe. And then we have got AI changes and improvements. So these are some of the things that are going to affect both PvP and PvE, but we'll kind of talk about why these changes have been made and what they're going to do to the gameplay when you jump into the raid, as opposed to just reading them out. So first things first is all bosses now have a 30% spawn chance. Now, that should, in theory, be consistent whether you play locally or whether you play on the official BSG servers, if you're playing on PvE, for example. And of course, if you're playing on the PvP servers, you should also have that 30% boss spawn chance. So kind of telling us exactly what the spawn chance of the bosses actually is within the game, which is fantastic. Looking forward to jumping in with a decent chance of those bosses in the game, and it gives us some feedback as to what sort of spawn chance that is the typical. I think that this is probably the typical. Anyway, then we've got increase the spawn chance for cultists in PvE and PvP game modes, which is fantastic. They were a pain in the backside to actually hunt down, to try and find them for the tasks that we actually have in the game. And this is definitely a beneficial update for those of you wanting to complete the tasks. Really, really nice to see that. And of course, you can finally get your hands on some engagements with the cultists without having to spend 100 raids searching for them. Then we've got reduced spawn chance for partizan in the PvE mode. This is something I did a video on recently where he seemed to be spawning at a ridiculously high rate for some players. I spoke to a few players who were saying that they basically never saw him, and it seemed like it was just very inconsistent when I was playing. For me, he seemed to spawn pretty much every raid if I waited long enough. If I just waited there simply to try and find partizan, you could find him every raid pretty much, or at least very consistently, especially if you're playing Lighthouse. I was finding him basically every single raid if I wanted to. But of course, if you move consistently and you're just constantly moving, it takes a while for him to catch up, and most of the time he doesn't catch up, so that's something you can do to avoid getting into fights with partizan. But the spawn chance for him has gone down, which I'm sure many people will be very, very thankful about. But for me, in terms of actually engaging the boss, once you know he's there, you can take him out very easily. Like, it's super easy to take out partizan compared to some of the other bosses in the game. I mean, he doesn't have particularly any armor. He just has quite a bit of health. But of course, you can take him out pretty easily. And most of the time, people take him out as if he was just a normal scav, and you don't even realize it's partizan when you take him out. And then we've got adjusted the spawn time for player scavs. So this is for PvP. They can no longer spawn any earlier than 17 minutes into a raid. So regardless of what your intel kind of center is leveled up, and all of the reductions you can get to your scav cooldown timer, and of course how how long it will take into the raid that you actually spawn. Some people, if you've got low scav rep, will spawn into the raid at like 30 minutes in. Some people, if you've got max fence rep, then you're going to actually be, much higher into the raid, but that will no longer be any less than 17 minutes. So you can't spawn in like 6 minutes into the raid starting, etc. And that's for most of the locations except from factory reserve and low level ground zero. Now, increase the chance of spawning with a better scav equipment if the player has a high standing with fence, which is fantastic. So essentially, you're going to be more consistently getting some of the better items in the game when you do spawn in with your scav. So that is fantastic. Increase the chance and maximum durability of all AI PMC weapons. Thank the heavens that this has come into the game. AI PMC obviously basically acted as if they were like raiders or scavs, whereby their weapons were always like 50 to 70% durability or 80%, where you never really got an actual decent weapon. You could not actually get those within the game that were, 100%. But this, as with one of the Tarkov community suggestions that was recently done, should actually be completed now. So when you jump in, you should see weapons that have 80 to 100% in the start of the raid. So essentially they will be maximum durability potentially when you jump in, which is amazing. Not all of them, but some of them. So that is a good change definitely for when we jump into Tarkov. And so with that being said, there is also all sniper scavs and regular scavs of any difficulty now have 30 head HP, so very easy to one tap. AI PMCs, raiders and rogues still have 35 head HP. Increase the chance for AI PMCs to perceive an AI scav as hostile to 80%. So essentially PMCs are not aggressive to every single scav in the game, but they are 80% hostile, so they will attack the scavs, so the PMCs will attack scavs in the raids at 80% of the time. So other chances of faction relationships remain the same on all locations. Bots now turn their head towards the presumed target to obtain better visual, so they'll look at you essentially, nothing major, but it's there. The detection speed for hard difficulty bots is now equal to that of normal difficulty bots. So essentially you're always being detected whether it's hard or normal for their difficulty. Adjusted the detection and speed settings for AI PMCs. Now they detect enemies 20% faster than regular bots. So essentially AI PMCs are going to detect you much faster and they're going to start engaging with you a little bit faster than, for example, scavs. AI PMCs now also switch to single fire at long ranges. So this was introduced with the previous patch, whereby essentially AI scavs were able to engage you with single fire at long ranges, and they'll switch to burst fire or whatever their maximum fire rate mode is when they get into the close range proximity. PMC's AI will actually do the same now. And that is just going to mean that you're going to get into more gunfights with these, and it should give you a little bit less of that chance of just being laser beamed from miles away by an AI PMC. So should help out some people when you're sprinting across an open area, you're not just getting lasered all at once by these PMCs from ages away. Regular bots no longer take cover in vegetation, so the bots won't just randomly run into a little bush and sit there and wait to engage you, so that's always good. Bots can no longer see through vegetation unless an enemy is very close to them, so they can't actually shoot through vegetation unless you're really close to them. So that's always good. And then bot vision is reduced if they are inside the vegetation as well. So for example, the cone of vision. So if you were to consider that someone could view in a, say it's a 90-degree spread of vision. So 45 degrees to the left from where the head is facing to 45 degrees to the right. That might be 100 meters long, and so that's their range at which they'll find you. As soon as they enter into a bush, that view range will essentially come down to maybe like 50 meters. So essentially that cone at which you'll be detected if you go into will be much smaller, and therefore you can play a bit more of a tactical stealthy role as you're moving towards, if you do find that there's a lot of PMCs or scavs or whatever it is inside of bushes and stuff like that. So that should definitely help out quite a few people from those weird shotgun scavs that hide in bushes, which are just a pain in everyone's backside. I'm pretty sure if you've played Tarkov from any of the patches, not even the recent ones. So yeah, that should definitely help it out. And then there's quite a few fixes in the game. We won't go through all of them. I'm just going to pick out a couple that might be interesting for you guys. So, fixed an issue where a bot would switch firing mode too often when the distance to the enemy change. So, for example, if you were to take a scenario where maybe you're running away from a scav and it's following you, and you keep stopping a little bit, and so the AI would just simply swap to full auto, swap back to single, swap back to full auto, swap back to single, swap, and just keep on doing that as that distance like went in and out of that range at which they do switch. So I'm sure that now there's some sort of logic that stops them from just constantly doing that, so that they'll just pick one of those. So that's definitely going to help. And fixed an issue where a bot would remain in vegetation after taking damage. So if you hit them, they are going to run out of that vegetation, which is nice. And then, of course, there's a couple more, which is to do with like game monitors to be like essentially detected incorrectly, so just more performance things. And there's a few fixes to incorrect conditions in the Gunsmith series tasks. And fix the cause of missing rewards in the cultist circle in certain cases. So this is quite big. The cultist circle was definitely giving out some pretty bad rewards even when you were waiting a while, and sometimes it would give you no rewards, which yeah, not ideal when you've put in, you know, a couple 100,000 rubles or maybe even more when you do drop those in there. After clicking the cultist circle notification, you will automatically switch to the cultist circle hideout zone. So a couple of bits that are kind of related to the cultist circle. And yeah, fix an issue where bots would not react to noise sources as well. So if you're sprinting, you're more likely to get detected than if you're, you know, walking slowly and that sort of stuff. And fix an issue where a bot with a shotgun or a pistol would not take cover if the enemy was at a long distance. So they would just kind of stand around, not doing anything. And then some issues with bots would spawn near PMCs at the start of a raid, which is not good. You don't want to be insta getting hit at the beginning of a raid. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of some interesting stuff, other than like, you know, bots walking into closed doors and through closed doors and stuff like that. So yeah, either way, really good updates. And of course, remember that you can post your own kind of feedback to the devs themselves, and they do actually listen. They do actually implement some of the changes that people have been putting in as suggestions to the Tarkov devs using the Tarkov community. And you can just create your own kind of, I guess, tab or post, and then you can basically suggest something that you think would be good for the game. If you've noticed a bug, if you've noticed an issue, you can post them on here. And yeah, got a good chance of the devs seeing it and maybe actually doing something about it, which is very rare for anything that is like this on any of the games that I've played previously. So I'd highly recommend jump on to the Tarkov community website, put in your suggestions, and you never know, you might actually have one of those suggestions go through. But with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. And of course, if you want to see more Escape from Tarkov, then be sure to subscribe down below. And of course, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't. And of course, I hope you'll join me in the next video coming very, very soon. Goodbye.